Hello, beautiful people. It is Freebie Friday, and today I am going to bring to you a gorgeous technique for processing negative emotions when you're being hijacked by emotions that you don't seem to be able to get on top of, and they just stay and they linger. And sometimes they'll get worse and worse, or they really steal your ability to feel like that you've got choices that you can move forward, particularly those. Now this can be any emotions. If you're feeling like there's emotions in you don't even know how they got there, or you do know how they got there, but you don't seem to be able to move them on. And there's all sorts of reasons that we've got emotions that are being triggered in our body at any time, and that's another subject. Today's subject is giving you a really cool little technique that I call the Squid ink bucket. I just made that up because I made the technique up based on other techniques that I have come across through all of my years. So I developed the Squid ink bucket because it's what worked for me. So it's particularly good if you're feeling like your emotions have gotten you to the point where they're spiraling, and they might start like this, but then they start to go down this negative spiral and they become something else. You might feel like at the beginning you start off going, I don't have any options, or I feel helpless in this situation, or I feel stupid, and then it moves into, I feel useless, and then it moves into, I feel really stuck, I've got no choices, and then it's like, oh, I'm just useless and unappealing. Now I'm really frustrated because I've done all these things and I shouldn't be feeling like this, and now I feel really sad about that. And this is just how emotions can spiral down a negative spiral. And there are all sorts of reasons why at any point of time you will feel these emotions. We are auric creatures, meaning we've got energetic auras, and that we kind of come into each other's auras and we pick up on each other's auras, especially in the centers, in our centers where we're not defined, because we've got all of these centers within our biology, and some of them are defined and some of them are undefined. And if you've got in the areas where you're undefined, this is where you can pick up on other people's aura where they are defined in that area of their chart, of their body. That is going into the human design way of understanding how how we work, what's making us tick. So sometimes all you need to do is take yourself out, or take yourself away, so that you get yourself out of the aura, out of that body or that pool or that room of auric influences, and take yourself somewhere where they're not influencing you anymore, so that you can just return back to your normal vibrational kind of state. Sometimes that's all it takes. But if you find yourself, for other reasons which maybe you understand or maybe you don't understand, feeling really hijacked by emotions, especially when they're spiraling, it really is helpful to take just a moment to go, okay, how can I stop this from spiraling? Because why would you want to stop it? One, because it feels horrible. It's a type of pain, and it registers in the brain in the same area as literal physical pain registers. So it's painful to have emotions that just keep on what I call squid inking. It's like, so let's go to the squid. Let's go to, why do I call this technique about getting rid of the hijacking emotions? Why do I call it squid ink? Because squids, those little creatures in the ocean that are kind of like, they're not octopus, but they're look like the cross between an octopus and a jellyfish. And when they're in the ocean, which is where they live, and they get a fright or they feel threatened, they will release this black ink, this squid ink, into the ocean as a protection mechanism. So I call this, when your emotions get turned on, when they get triggered, they release like a squid ink into your body, and you're like, I'm feeling the ink or the vibe or the flavor of that emotion. You might have several things that are triggered for you. As the spiral starts to go down, it might fire up other wounds or areas that have the potential to be triggered, and to fire those up, and then you've got all these little areas of you that are releasing the squid ink of that particular wound or that particular story. The emotion is going blah, and you go, ugh, I can just feel all the ugh. So the squid ink technique is just stop. Do yourself a favor. I know it's really hard to stop sometimes, but take 1 minute to do this. I'll ideally take as long as you need to, but once you get the process, get the visual, and you get the sense of how to do it, you can just keep doing it as you're operating. You don't have to stop like a meditation and really focus. But in the first instance, I do invite you to and encourage you to just stop for a moment and focus and do this, so that when you are walking around or in the shower or shoveling a hole or typing up a document or having a meeting or whatever activities you're getting into, that you can kind of do this process in the background whilst you're still functioning. Now, I am not calling this a bypass. We're not bypassing negative emotions, because if you have negative emotions, that's normal, okay? You're a human. But if you're getting hijacked by emotions all the time, if they are getting the better of you, if you're feeling like, worst case scenario, like you don't even want to be in this world anymore. It's like, I can't do this anymore. I feel really, really stuck and really helpless and hopeless, all the way through to, I'm just constantly irritated and agitated, and I'm, impatient with people. Whatever the spectrum of emotions are, I don't really believe that it's ever cool to just bypass how come that happens to you. I'm an advocate for understanding, why does that fire up in me? And why would it be good for me to understand myself more? So that's kind of my jam, is helping you understand yourself more, because we're freaking complex. Humans biologically are really super complex. So this technique is about feeling the squid ink, feeling the zhu of the squid ink, the emotion as it's gone and squid inked, and you're like, ugh. So I invite you to just sit still for a moment, just center yourself. Ultimately, the more centered you can get, the better, the stiller you can get. Do some breathing, really just let your breathing ground you into the moment that you're in, into the chair that you're in, and just be super present as possible, as much as possible. Even if you're driving, you can, do this. And then I want you to imagine a huge big, it could be a tub, a big bathtub, a big bucket, a big, hole in the ground, but it needs to have a plug in it, because later we're going to pull the plug out and let the water empty out. And there's water in it, and it's, 3 meters out in front of you. Do your best to imagine. I know we all are not good at imagining in our mind exactly what it looks like, but get as clear as you are able to with this vision of this big bucket out in front of you, about 3 meters out in front of you. And what I would like you to do is then bring your attention back into your body, and just feel where you can feel those emotions. Where do they feel like they are in your body? And lots of times you're going to say up in your head, because that's where people are used to focusing. That's where people are used to spending their time. We've got this whole entire body that holds information for us. So I'm inviting you to go, okay, if it's in your head, let's acknowledge that. And then let's also see if it's somewhere else. Are you noticing anywhere else in your body, like it's just a sense of, like maybe nervousness in your tummy, or tightness in your chest, or tightness in your throat, or tightness in your shoulders, or anywhere in your body. Just let yourself feel it, like the emotion, and even try to name them if you can. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong, because some emotions feel very similar. Sad and anger can often feel the same. Often anger is sitting underneath sadness, but you might feel angry, but actually you're really disappointed or frustrated. But just try to get a gist of that emotion and where it's sort of sitting inside your body. And imagine it like the squid ink. It's like some story or some part of your makeup has gone, whoa, you have just touched me. You've come into my territory and I've squid inked here because this is what I do. Because that story plays out. There's this little story going and it's, Now, you don't even always have to be conscious of how that happens. There's so many ways that can happen to you unconsciously. That's why it's super, super liberating and empowering to do heaps and heaps of work around self-awareness. What is a human? What are all the things, So then get as many of those emotions as you can, as many squids that are in there inking away. Just let yourself feel into your body. No judgment, no blaming anybody, just really curiously going, ugh, that feels like this emotion. And what I would like you to do is imagine that you're just grabbing it. It's like if you reach into a big body of water and pick up a plastic bag that's got lots of water in it, or a wet tissue, like you pick it up and it's dripping with its stuff. So I would like you to feel the sense of grabbing that emotion, however many you've got, and throwing them out there into that big container that you've got out the front, 3 meters away from you. Get as many of them as you can. Name it as much as you can, even if it's just like, ugh, I don't know, just depression. This one feels really anxious, and grab them and throw them into the bucket until you can look at them out there in the bucket, see the color of the squid, and just notice, visualize all those emotions out there in the bucket. And you can even visualize how they're a problem for you, and just start to see it all outside of yourself. If you spend a few moments doing that and detaching them, just really taking all of these squid inky things, emotions out, and put them all in the bucket and looking into that container and just visualizing however they look to you. Don't worry if you don't get a good visual. If you get a sound, that's okay. If you get a smell, that's okay. But really try to imagine, however your imagination works, all of these emotions that were in your body out there in that bucket, and to not feel badly toward them, to not judge them, to not be confused about them, but just to curiously look at them and go, wow, they were all switched on inside my biorhythms here, and I've just gotten them all and thrown them all out, and I can see them out there 3 meters away in that big bucket. And then just tap into your body. Ultimately, what we want to do is then go, well, what I would really like to feel is this instead. And let yourself fill up those little spaces where you've taken away all those wet bags or wet tissues or squid inky parts of you. And just allow other states to fill that up with. Like, I caution you to go straight for the big ones. Like, I want to feel ecstatic, or I want to feel really excited or joyful. Just, if you can manage to achieve that, good for you. But ultimately, I would say take the step of going, I just want to feel neutral. I don't want to feel negative. I do want to feel positive. But if it's too hard to feel positive straight away, just go, I just want to feel neutral. I just want to feel my neutral state, My neighbour's turning his motorbike on. Excuse me, I'm back. And do spend a moment there just trying to imagine what it feels like to just bring the neutrality back in. If you notice there's another squid ink, if you notice that it's fired back up again, that's okay. You just grab it and keep throwing them. Just keep putting them out in that container. And at some point, I want you to look at that container and say thank you to all of those emotions, because at some point they have a story to tell. When you're ready, you can ask that story. Right now, all we're going to do is, in our imagination, we're going to let the let the bottom fall out of the bucket and let all of that bucket just empty away, like it totally empties out. And if your imagination needs to, imagine the bucket getting smaller and 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 smaller until it's a tiny little dot, until it completely disappears. There's no bucket out there anymore. And just allow yourself to let the neutral feelings be in your body. Now that's all there is to it. That's the quick explanation of this process, but it's really about noticing the emotion, trying to name the emotion, not judging it, not blaming anybody, not doing any of those other things, but just purely going the same as you would if you were at home and you had a bath of water there and you noticed a plastic bag had blown into it. You would just pick it up and take it out. And it's simply that. I want you to pick the emotions up and take them out and put them 3 meters away in that big bucket, and then make the bucket disappear. And then ultimately allow yourself to fill all those spaces up again with neutral, with this sense of neutral. And then you might pick another emotion and say, I want to feel curious. I want to feel a bit optimistic. You know, just let yourself do it a step at a time, so there isn't a sense of, oh, this doesn't work, you know. So once you get the sense of this, you can do it any time, you know, and you can keep doing it today and tomorrow and on the weekend. Just keep noticing those emotions, if they're negative and if they're not constructive or they don't feel constructive. Negative emotions are always constructive if you understand them and if you do the work, right? Go talk to someone, ring me up, let's do some sessions and figure out how come that happens, because there's always wisdom in the wound. You know, once we move through the wound and understand how come it happens, how come that happens to me, once we figure that out and move through it and figure out how to move through it, then our wound becomes our wisdom. So I always have that sense of knowing, if I don't let this beat me and I sit in it and I'm curious about it and I do these things to help me process it, then my wound becomes my wisdom. And I would much rather make that effort than try and bypass, numb myself, keep myself really busy, and it all just stays in there, you know. So I hope that little technique, the squid ink bucket, is of help to you. Please reach out and let me know how it works for you, or any stories around that. And if you would like to connect to talk about how right, and to get more awareness around what's going on for you and your own emotions and all the different ways that I can help you with that, then I will leave a link in this post and you can reach out to me. So this is Freebie Friday, and today's freebie was the squid ink bucket for helping you to process or to get out from the negative spiral. Just one of the gorgeous little tools that can help you throughout your day. For now, I am sending you big love and big encouragement for your absolute best self and your best life. Bye for now.